Hello and welcome to the online version of the UW Study Abroad Pre-Departure Orientation. We're so glad that you've decided to make a study abroad program part of your education, and we hope that you find the information presented here useful to you. In this orientation, we'll cover a whole host of topics, from enrollment and financial aid to cultural competency and academics abroad. You'll be quizzed on the material presented, so pay attention as we go. The first thing we'll do is take a look at some items you need to consider before you go. And the first of those items is your study abroad account and the post-acceptance requirements you'll need to complete before we can enroll you. You'll need to turn in your contract. You'll need to enter your study abroad insurance certificate number. We'll talk more about insurance later. Your passport number, complete the Catalyst Health Survey, and attend an orientation. That's what you're doing right now. Once you've completed those steps, the UW Study Abroad office will enroll you in a placeholder course called FSTDY 300. You'll be enrolled for the minimum number of credits to make you a full-time student for that term. This will allow you to keep your UW student status, receive UW resident credit, and access to your financial aid. Don't forget, if you enroll in courses at the UW, not a part of your study abroad program, you'll be charged tuition for those courses. We'll talk about the process for removing the placeholder course, replacing it with the courses you took while you were abroad, in the When You Return section. Regardless of the kind of program you're participating in, it's a good idea to think about a few academic things. Check in with your academic advisor to make sure that the program of study you'll be undertaking is appropriate for your degree. If you'll be participating in a university exchange, a department exchange, or on an affiliated program, it's a good idea to research the courses that you plan to take to determine the course equivalencies before you go. Check in with the relevant department here on campus to help. Next, we'll talk about a few financial concerns. The first is scholarships. The University of Washington has 2 scholarships specific to its own study abroad students. The GO Scholarship is for students who are Husky Promise or Pell Grant eligible. The Fritz Scholarship is for students who are residents of Washington and humanities or social science majors. Attend an info session to learn more about these scholarships. It can give you some really great insight into how to improve your application. And while your study abroad advisor can certainly give you some advice, there are some really great resources on campus about scholarships. The Office of Merit Scholarships, Fellowships, and Awards in Mary Gates 171 can certainly steer you in the right direction. Because of the way that we can currently enroll you in study abroad, you're eligible for any scholarship, not just a scholarship specific to study abroad. If you friend us on Facebook, we'll send you some information about funding every Friday. And last but not least, don't forget to verify that scholarships you receive from an independent source are eligible for use in a study abroad program. Financial aid is an important consideration for many students. Unfortunately, most aid will apply to your study abroad program. You want to check in with your financial aid advisor just to be sure. There are some steps for revising your aid package, as everything that you do on your study abroad program is an educational expense, including airfare and cost of living while you're there. The steps for revising that aid package are as follows. Check your study abroad account for your official program budget. It should be under your attached documents. If you don't see it, send an email to your study abroad advisor. Then complete a revision request form available from the financial aid office. Turn both of these forms into financial aid, and they'll revise your aid accordingly. Remember, financial aid cannot be distributed before the published start date of a UW quarter. So if you're going on a program that leaves before that start date and you're planning on using financial aid to support yourself, make sure you've got a plan. Next, we'll talk about a few logistical packing considerations. The first is luggage. It might seem a little obvious, but you want to make sure that you're mobile. If you need to travel over some uneven ground or up some flights of stairs, you'll be awfully glad that you have a bag that fits on your back. The next thing to consider is local dress. For example, many people in Europe tend to dress a little more formally than they do in the United States, and you may want to pack some things that will allow you to blend in. It may also be important to consider some cultural components of dress. For example, you may need a headscarf to enter certain places in certain countries in the world. If you'll be taking some medication while you're abroad, you need to be careful about how you pack it. Make sure that the name on the prescription bottle matches your passport exactly. You'll also need to make sure that the country that you're visiting will allow you to bring that medication into its borders. For example, ADHD medication can be illegal in some countries. Make sure that whatever technology you bring with you has the appropriate adapter to adjust for the voltage that comes out of the wall in the country that you're in. You'd hate to ruin your technology before you even got a chance to use it. The most common question we get about technology is about phones, and we found that for the vast majority of students, the best option is a pay-as-you-go kind of plan. This allows you to stay in touch with the people you'd like to stay in touch with without going through the rigmarole of a contract. And lastly, pack an extra pair of clothes in your carry-on bag. You'll be awfully glad you did if your checked bag is lost. Next, we'll talk about travel documents and record keeping. Your first and most important travel document is obviously your passport, but make sure that it's valid for 6 months after you return from the countries you're going to be visiting. If you need a visa, make sure you have access to that as well. We'll talk more about visas later. Some countries in the world require you to have an immunization record for specific diseases before they'll allow you entry. Yellow fever, for example. So make sure you've got your immunization record if it's required. You'll also need to hang on to those prescriptions we talked about earlier. Keep a copy of the prescriptions themselves. Keep 2 copies of these travel documents in case they get lost. It's also a good idea to scan a copy of your passport and email it to yourself, and anything else you feel comfortable with. If you don't feel comfortable emailing those things, make sure you've got a copy with a trusted family member at home, so if they get lost, you'll have access to them. Banking and access to funds while you're abroad can be different for every student, but here's some things you'll find commonly useful. First, contact your bank or credit card company and let them know the destinations and your travel dates specifically. Otherwise, you'll run the risk of them shutting down your card for fear of fraud. Nothing is more frustrating. Check with your bank at home to see if they have partner banks abroad. You can save yourself a lot in international fees. Some countries require that you have a PIN code attached to your credit card. This isn't very common in the United States, but you'll find it frustrating if you don't have that PIN code and you need it. So see if your bank can apply one for you. Have a backup plan for accessing money in case your card is blocked or lost. Also, consult currency converters regularly to check in with currency conversion rates. Carrying local currency can help with this, as you won't have to check the currency conversion rate every time you use your card. This may be the first time you've ever had to encounter the idea of acquiring a visa in order to travel abroad. Remember that it's your responsibility to acquire that visa, and it depends on your destination, length of stay, and nationality as to whether or not it's a requirement. There are different types of visas, so make sure you apply for the right visa. And start early. The process can be very, very detailed. It could require a trip to a consulate. They are required for entry, and there are consequences for not getting a visa. So check the consulate website for the country that you're planning to visit within the country that you're from to start the process. While it is your responsibility, your study abroad advisor will certainly be there to help you.
You'll remember from the beginning that study abroad insurance is required for your enrollment. It's through a company called OnCall International, costs $2 a day, and is incredibly comprehensive.
The coverages for medical, political, and natural disaster evacuation are all things we've used since we began this program. If you feel that your insurance coverage is just as comprehensive, there is a waiver process. It's available on our website, studyabroad.washington.edu. There is a deadline, so check the website.
On the subject of health and safety is emergency preparedness, so sign up online with OnCall International.
But more importantly is to look up the local emergency number in the country that you're visiting and write it down. It's also a good idea to research your destination country's health and medical concerns before you go. The State Department runs a wonderful website specific to study abroad students that will give you great information. So does the CDC and the World Health Organization. If you are a U.S. citizen, register with the U.S. Embassy before you go at travel.state.gov. If there's a crisis or an emergency abroad, it's important that you have people looking for you that can help.
Before we move on to the next section, complete the questions in the quiz below, and then start the next video.